So one of the things I noticed as I wrote all my books is that it has an underlying theme. For me, it really is about identity and purpose. And I think as an author, I truly believe that it's more than just something you do. I believe it's something that you're called to, and that there is a message on your heart that's wired into you, even before you were born. That's just my belief. There's a life message on your heart that needs to be shared with the world. And I would say, go and find out. Take some time to really explore, what is that message? What is that unique way that I communicate to the world? What is the message that's written on my heart? And you can do that by just thinking about the things that you're passionate about. What change would you like to see in the world? And it starts to give you a really clear picture of who you are. I think on days when I feel discouraged, I go back to that picture in my head of who I am as a writer and why I'm doing it. So when I was having a really hard time, I had this picture in my head of lying on the floor as a little girl making paper crowns. And just I had a plethora of crayons and cardboard and pom-poms and fake jewels, and I was making these paper crowns. And I saw myself giving them to the Father, to my Heavenly Father. And I saw him wear them so proudly. He loved these crowns so much. And it just made me want to make more and more because he loved them so much. So I then saw him take those paper crowns and lighting them like lanterns and sending them out into the world.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Yet again, I have yet another author on the podcast, and I'm excited to have my guest on today. We're going to be talking about her book, her journey as an author, and how we can help others. My guest today has a passion for helping authors, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. Meliza's with me. Welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, David. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you today and to share my story. Thank you for the opportunity.
So when we met for our pre-interview chat a little while ago, as soon as I heard your voice, it took me to friends and family that I have known growing up, and they come from your part of the world, but you don't live there. You live somewhere else. Can you explain to our listeners, A, that beautiful accent and where that comes from, and B, where you are now in the world?
Yes. Well, I was born and raised in the beautiful South Africa. Most of my family still lives there, and we love going back and visiting friends and family. But I started traveling when I was 23 and met my wonderful husband in the city of London. The funny thing is he's also born and raised in South Africa. But his mom is British, and they moved over here just about a year before we met. So I moved back to South Africa, and he emailed me for 3 years, and I decided to put him out of his misery and move back to England in 2005. So we got married, and we have a beautiful family. I have 2 teenagers. They are teens now. And yeah, we are living the happily ever after story here in the United Kingdom.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my friends are from South Africa as well, and they came to Canada, and we kind of adopted them as a family. We didn't really know them, but we met them, and my family fell in love with them, and they would just be at all our family events. And we're like, so to us, we just called them our uncle and aunt, but they weren't related at all. But they just came in as friends, and we took them in as family. And I remember their first winter in Canada. It was kind of snowing, but there was just snow in the air. Like it wasn't like accumulating. It wasn't like on the ground. It was just in the air, right? Fluffy snow. And they both stood in the front yard and just stared into the sky and let the snow hit them. And they're like, we never have ever seen this in our lives. And for us, it was like, it's just snow. But for them, it was a whole world of difference from where they came from, right?
Yes, I guess in Canada you have an abundance of snow.
Yeah.
But for us as South Africans, it's a novelty. It's an absolute treat. So, although it doesn't snow very often in the part of England that I'm living in, it's wonderful. It's magical for me whenever it's snowing. I am outside, just loving it. It's beautiful. I believe it's actually snowing in South Africa at the moment.
What? Wow.
Yes, I've seen some posts on Facebook from
Wow.
family members that are saying that it's snowing. So that's climate change for you.
Well, I can't even picture that, but that's okay. That's definitely that's new. I love that. So okay, so talk a little bit about your author journey. Take us back to early days and kind of how this all started for you. Can you kind of
Okay.
fill us in there?
Yeah. Well, I'll start back in South Africa because that's really where my story starts. And I have to kind of share a little bit of my history in order to explain how I ended up writing. So I grew up in a Christian home. My daddy is a pastor,
Yes.
and he still pastors a church at the age of 72.
Wow.
And he's just an amazing human being. And I called him into his office and very officially announced that I wanted to become a Christian at the age of 6.
Hmm.
So he prayed with me and explained to me what that meant, and it was wonderful. But shortly after that, at the age of 7, I experienced a trauma that really ushered in a lot of shame and
Hmm.
guilt and condemnation into my life. And I would be in front of church at the pulpit every Sunday, repenting for the awful sinner I was and just felt so horrible about myself.
Hmm.
So you can only imagine what this must have looked like to the people
Yeah.
in the church, seeing this little person just so full of shame and just confessing all these sins every single Sunday.
Hmm.
I think it's funny now when I look back at it, but at the time I was really struggling with not feeling good enough, and that kind of carried on into my adult life. And I spent, I think deep down, I just believed that there was something wrong with me, and I spent my entire life looking for what that was wrong with me and how to fix it. And it took me to some really dark places with my mental health and with body image issues. But I just had this desire to find out how to fix myself. And I kind of learned how to manage the issues around it, how to manage my mental health, how to manage the body image stuff. But I knew that there was more, that there was a possibility of freedom. I heard testimonies of people, I heard stories that people shared about the way they experienced freedom. And so I knew there was more, and I was always on the search um, for that truth. And I also deep down knew that if I could just connect, really connect with God, then I might find that freedom that I was looking for. But I believe that he was disappointed with me. So
Hmm.
that didn't help. That
Yeah.
really didn't help. So um, I got to the point where I made myself so tired and exhausted trying to look for that connection that I said one morning to my husband, my wonderful husband,
Hmm.
that I give up. I give up. I've tried so hard to connect with God. I've tried so hard to find that freedom, and it's just not going to happen for me. I believe that God loves the world, but I don't know if he really knows what I'm going through or that he actually cares about that.
Hmm.
And my very wise husband just very quietly listened. He didn't say anything. I think he knew that the emotions were very raw and real at the time. Um, and I just went about my day. A few days later, my husband suggested that I take my son, who was 3 years old at the time, to see a new Disney movie called Tangled. And as I walked into the movie theater, I just could tangibly feel the presence of God in the movie theater. And as I started to watch the movie, it felt like somebody switched on a light in my heart, and I could see for the first time what was happening behind the scenes of my life. And the pivotal moment in that movie for me was seeing the face of King Frederick in the story as he lit the lantern for his lost daughter to celebrate her on her birthday, because even though she was lost, he continued to celebrate her every single year. And as he released that lantern, that there was a tear that ran down his cheek. And that expression, the illustrators of that movie did such an incredible job, because I felt like I was looking at God's face. And for the first time, I realized that he wasn't disappointed in me and he wasn't mad at me, but he was moved about the fact that I was lost and I needed him, and he wanted to be in that relationship, in that union with me, to help me and to guide me into freedom. So that movie made me realize that I was tangled up in a lot of lies. I was tangled up in lies about myself, lies about who God was, lies about my circumstances, and even lies about other people. And it started a process of becoming untangled from those lies. Now, somebody noticed that there was something different about me when I came out of that movie theater. I had a beautiful friend, Marie, and she walked with me and helped me unpack what was happening and the revelation and the insight and the wisdom that I was receiving. And even now, at the should I tell you my age? At the age of,
we can make up any number you want, whatever you like. You're completely free to do that.
At the age of 46, I am still learning through that movie, and God is still using that movie to guide me and to show me things about myself and show me things about the world. So I started sharing that experience with her, and she really encouraged me to share that with other people, share that with, I started by sharing in a women's group at church, and then I became part of the ministry team there. I needed a lot of encouragement because I'm an introvert. I don't like to share or speak in public. And I was very afraid to share my message with people, but she really encouraged me. So it took a while, but people started to come up to me and say, you should write a book, and you should share these things that you've learned. You should share that with the world. And it was sometimes a little bit random as well. And just people would walk up to me and they wouldn't even know me. And they would say to me, you've got a book in you. You've got something to share. And I was, okay. And it got so ridiculous that my husband decided one year for my birthday, at the age of 44, to buy me a laptop. And he said to me, it's time to write your story. And that was it took me about 10 years to actually have the courage to sit down and to write and to share that message. But what was interesting as well is, as I said yes, and as I started writing, I realized that there was a lot more things to get untangled from, that I was still in process. And then I started second guessing, well, should I be writing about getting untangled when I'm still tangled up in some lies that I believe? But that writing process really helped me to explore that. And as I took those steps to share and to put my message out into the world, I started to realize that the more I do that, the less scary it becomes and the less fearful I am. So yes, it started to become a passion to help other people as well, to share their message and to help them know that you don't have to have it all together to share the light that's in you.
Yeah. So where are you at now in your journey as you've been writing your thoughts, thinking your way through your story? Where are you at right now? Are you still tangled? Or are you still working through that?
I'm a lot less tangled than I am.
Good.
But one of the things that I have learned as well is that life happens to all of us.
Yeah.
There's actually a little video that I saw on TikTok, I was watching a reel, and it was about a little seal, baby seal, that got tangled up in ropes and fishing line and all sorts of junk. And it was trying desperately to get into the ocean with the little seal pups. And these rescuers kept it behind. They caught it and they kept it on the shore. And they were cutting through these ropes. And some of the ropes were very large and colorful, and you could easily see them, and they could easily snip through those. But they had to really rub their hands against the skin or the hide of the seal to kind of feel for where they were fishing line that was, you couldn't see it, but it was there. And that little seal was struggling. It just wanted the freedom of the ocean, but it didn't realize how damaging that stuff that was attached to it. And sometimes I remember, or that picture just speaks to me so powerfully, because, the ocean, unfortunately, is full of junk, right?
Yeah.
And life is like that sometimes. It's full of stuff that we don't anticipate or we don't expect. And we get tangled up in lies about ourselves, or we get tangled up in limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't always see it. So we really need the guidance. For me, it's my faith and the relationship I have with the Holy Spirit that helps me to identify what those lies are. And I usually know that there's something up when I'm struggling or when I'm in that discomfort. I have big emotions, or I feel off. Then I know, okay, I'm a little bit tangled. I need to go and let the rescuer just have a feel and see where that fishing line is and that rope is, and he can snip me free.
And for that seal, that moment of being caught by a stranger, what are they going to do? What are they doing to me? Like, why, like, I just want to be with my friends and get in the ocean. I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get away from you. But then you don't even know if the seal even realizes what's happening to them, that someone's trying to help. They just want to get away, right? And that's something that we do, right? People get put in our lives, people who are here to help us. We just want to get away from them because we don't know if they're going to hurt us, right? But they're there to help us, right? So we have to allow people to help us, which is hard to do when we want to take care of ourselves or we don't know how bad it is. The seal doesn't know how bad it really is, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I guess the seal becomes used to being tangled. This is the way I am. I'm just tangled and there's no hope for me, right?
That's right.
So when someone catches us or someone gets put in our lives who can help us, we have to surrender and let them do their thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that surrender is a big part of the process.
That's scary.
Yes. Yeah. But also, I think sometimes we attach shame to being stuck.
Yep.
And one of the things I had to learn is that there is absolutely no shame in being tangled. That little seal didn't choose to get tangled up in all that junk.
Yeah.
It happened because it's life. So what keeps us away sometimes from asking for help is we feel ashamed. And that's where I was for many, many years of my life. I was so ashamed. And I felt like God was ashamed and disappointed in me. And, just asking for help, asking people for help. It felt like I was I was admitting to something really shameful. But, I learned that there's absolutely no shame, in being tangled, in being stuck. It happens to every single one of us. And we all need people. We all need, that little seal couldn't see what it was tangled up in, but someone else can. Someone from the outside can have a look and help us kind of identify the things that is keeping us stuck.
What kind of lessons have you been teaching your kids as you work through all this, as a parent and as an author, as you write out your thoughts? Because I think to some degree, I have 3 kids, all older. To some degree, when your kids are young, they don't think of us as parents as people, right? They just think of us as their parents. And they don't realize that we're just people and we have our own entanglements. We have our own things that we struggle with. And sometimes we don't let them see that side of us. What are they learning about you as you've worked through this in front of them?
Yeah. Well, I have a very open relationship with my kids when it comes to my struggles. And when I mess up and when I make a mistake as a parent, we talk about it. Yeah. It's not something I hide from them. I tell them when I'm having a rough day or when I'm struggling with my mental health or with a destructive thought pattern. I point that out to them. I find that it's sometimes a little bit hard to help them see when they are going through some of the process themselves. So it was interesting. I was just sitting with my journal one evening and I was actually contemplating this. How do I help my kids to create habits, healthy habits around their thought patterns and just the way they face adversity or problems? Because, we all go through some tough stuff. And I know my kids had a really difficult time in their schooling process. And as I was journaling, I had this entire children's story download to me, and I wrote a children's series called Molly's Treasure. Is the first book in the series. And it was just a lovely way to kind of share Molly's story with my kids, and through storytelling, actually helping them learn ways to manage their own mental health and manage their own the way that they deal with problems and relationships and all of those things in life. Because a lot of the time, I think when we go through difficulties, every difficulty comes with a set of beliefs. So we start to believe something about the world, or we start to believe something about ourselves, but that's not necessarily the truth. So it's helping people or helping kids see that just because something bad is happening to you doesn't mean that you are a bad person or that other people are bad. You need to kind of almost distance yourself from the situation and have a look at it objectively. And I think storytelling is a great tool for helping kids do that.
Yeah. And it's a thing that I think we parents, we need to give our kids the tools to learn how to address things like mental health. Like I know when I was growing up, that wasn't even a topic. That wasn't even something you'd ever have in, like, this kind of conversation would never happen. And no one would even know how to even bring this up or be aware that they're struggling with their mental health. And and the world is so much different than when we were young. So our kids are growing up with a completely different outlook on life, different things that are hard for them that we never had to deal with.
That's
So
right.
being able to teach and demonstrate to our kids how we as humans, even though we're parents on a pedestal or whatever, however our children look up to us, we're still just people finding
Yeah,
our way, making mistakes, but living in front of them, right? Because they're soaking everything up, from our
that's
actions
right.
to our words to our how we react. They're just like a big sponge, just taking this all in. So I love that you live in front of your kids this way. It's great.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be open with them and let them see that side of you. Um, and yeah, I absolutely love the relationship I have with them. They are now teenagers. And I remember people saying to me, wait until they are teens and you're going to have all this trouble. And I love the fact that I don't have all this trouble because we communicate.
Nice.
You know, I have built the connection and the communication with them from a very early age. And they know that they can talk to us about anything without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
You know, we are just going to listen, and we're not going to judge them or preach at them because kids don't. That just never,
Yeah.
that
Right.
doesn't go down very well. It's, you know, they don't want to hear about your life experience they don't want to hear about your knowledge. They want to actually see that you are more than what you're saying. You're
Mhm.
practicing what you
Yeah.
preach. And I had that in my dad as well. You know, even though he's a pastor of a church, and you can imagine that someone like that could be quite preachy,
Yeah.
and there was never any judgment from his heart. Or I had so much freedom growing up to explore what I believed and to be who I was and to make mistakes
Mhm.
and because that's part of life.
Yeah.
So it was demonstrated to me as a child, and now I can use that same example with my children and allow them to be free, be who they are, and communicate with me without fear of being judged.
So in the process of writing your book, what did you learn about yourself as a new author as you kind of went through the process? What kind of life
So,
lessons did you learn for yourself in that?
well, I learned, first I discovered how much I still needed to get untangled in certain areas. For example, putting myself out there and
Mhm.
not being afraid to say what I think or to share my thoughts. Um, and I also learned in that process that I I can do it. You know, I do have something significant to share with the world. Even though it doesn't always feel like that,
Yeah.
I have something of value. Um, and that was a process for me because I honestly I didn't realize how much I didn't believe in
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah. So even coming on a podcast and speaking like this is another step.
It's a huge step,
Yeah.
and I'm very new
Yeah.
to the whole podcasting, being interviewed on a podcast. So that was also a big step. But I find that when you start taking those little steps of uh, of just taking the risk, doing something that's outside of your comfort zone, the more you do it, the less scary it becomes, the easier it becomes to do it the next time. So, you know, I just want to speak to that person who is feeling like they don't have anything of value, or they feel scared to share the story that they know would bless the world, you know, the story that could really make a difference for someone. I just want to tell them to take the risk, put yourself out there. It's not as scary when you start doing it and when you see how people respond to the message that you carry, then it makes it worth it. It really is about um, the journey for that person that you're trying to reach.
Right.
It really isn't about you. And that's one of the things that I've learned as well. As awesome as my story is, as much as I love it, it really isn't about me. It's about the person who needs to see the light, who needs to see that there is hope, who needs to see that they need to be untangled.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do it. So I think understanding your why is really important.
So how many books have you written, or what's in the works as in the future? Can you kind of give us a sense of what's going on from an author perspective for you?
Yeah, so I'm about to start writing book number 7.
Wow. Oh.
Yes, it is. It is amazing to see how when you say yes,
Mm-hmm.
things start to flow. They start to flow, and I can't believe I'm actually on book number 7. So I wrote my first book, which is Untangled, in 2020.
Okay.
And then straight after that, I started the children's series.
Okay.
Initially, I only thought it would be one book. And then once I wrote the first book, I received the second book and then the third book. So it was amazing to see how that creativity just seemed to have found its flow. And that was amazing. I had so much fun writing those children's books. And then I started to get a lot of requests from other people who were writing and publishing their books to help them. I had some really interesting experience with my publishing journey, and it didn't always go as smoothly as I hoped. And I learned some tough lessons the hard way. So because I received so many questions, I kind of noted what people were asking me, and I put all of that information into a little book. It's not a big book, but it gives just the basic foundational things that you need to know before you say yes to your call to write, or before you write a book. Some very basic things that people need to kind of prepare themselves for, because I think if you're not prepared for some of the challenges that comes with the calling, then you get discouraged, and then you give up on something that is actually really worth doing. So I'm an encourager at heart. I want to see people write their messages and do their thing, especially because I've seen myself go through that process, and I've dealt with those discouraging thoughts and all of those challenges that come with the writing journey. So I put that into a book. And then I had another children's book, which is a picture book that also kind of just came out of a journaling experience. And it's called God is Wild About You. And it's a little poetry book or rhyming book for children. And it really looks at dealing with that voice of competition, comparing ourselves to everything or people around us. And so I wrote that book, and now I'm on book number 7, which is called, the working title is How to Be Epic at Failing. And it really is about embracing your mistakes
like it.
and letting those mistakes launch you into your destiny.
Give us a sneak peek. What are we gonna read there? Can you share any of that? Because that's a great topic, great title, by the way.
So I really in that book, I look at all the things that failure teaches us about ourselves, or again, it's about the lies that start to entangle us when we fail. So what does failure sound like to you? What is it saying to you? Is it telling you that you're stuck? Is it telling you that you're not good enough? Is it telling you that things will never change? Is it telling you that you don't have what it takes to be what you want to be? And I look at the life of the disciple Peter and how he betrayed Jesus, and I look at how he felt in his pit of despair, and then I share a little bit about my own time that I've spent in the pit of despair and what that looked like for me. And then I look at each one of those lies that I struggled with, and I share a strategy really for how to deal with that lie. And it's called EPIC. So I talk about the E is for eliminating the shame and the condemnation,
Yep.
the guilt. The P is for permission, to give yourself permission to fail. And the I is for being strong in your identity, in who you were created to be.
Mhm.
And then the C is for confronting the lie. And really, when you know who you are, you know how much you are loved, and you know what you are called to do, then that gives you the strength and the authority to confront the lie.
Mm.
But it's really difficult to confront lies in our life if we don't really understand who we are and what we're called to do. So
Wow.
that's what that book is about.
So was this new book another download for you, or through journaling or something? Is that how this began?
Yeah, this was actually a chapter in my book Untangled that
Okay.
was highlighted to me, and I felt like it needed to be developed. There was more information there that was really, really helpful.
Mm.
So I've just recently sat down and kind of looked at it, and then I saw the framework for the book, and then just started building my framework. And once I had a really solid framework, um, I'm now in the process of just sitting down and writing all the little pieces of the puzzle.
Amazing. So our audience is a mixture of readers and authors. For
Mm-hmm.
the authors that are listening to our conversation,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say to them? How can we encourage an author today by what you've learned through the process of writing and the topics of what you're writing? Because so many things that you've discussed fall into the laps of authors as they're writing their journey and they're writing their books. There's a lot of the things we've talked about already that they're dealing with. What would you say
Yeah.
to a new author that's struggling through the journey of writing their first book? How can we encourage them today?
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed as I wrote all my books is that it has an underlying theme. For me, it really is about identity and purpose. And I think as an author, I truly believe that it's more than just something you do. I believe it's something that you're called to, and that there is a message on your heart that's wired into you, even before you were born. That's just my belief. Is there something? There's a life message on your heart that needs to be shared with the world. And I would say, go and find out. Take some time to really explore, what is that message? What is that unique way that I communicate to the world? What is the message that's written on my heart? And you can do that by just thinking about the things that you are passionate about. What change would you like to see in the world? And it starts to give you a really clear picture of who you are. I think on days when I feel discouraged, I go back to that picture in my head of who I am as a writer and why I'm doing it. So when I was having a really hard time, I had this picture in my head of lying on the floor as a little girl making paper crowns. And just I had a plethora of crayons and cardboard and pom-poms and fake jewels, and I was making these paper crowns. And I saw myself giving them to the Father, to my Heavenly Father. And I saw him wear them so proudly. He loved these crowns so much. And it just made me want to make more and more because he loved them so much. So I then saw him take those paper crowns and lighting them like lanterns and sending them out into the world. And so when I find myself discouraged, then I see myself as that little girl just making paper crowns. I'm not an important author. I'm nobody particularly special, but I love what I do because it makes my Father happy.
Yeah.
And also, I know that there are other people sitting in places of limiting beliefs. Like I call them my tower of limiting beliefs. Like I know there are other people stuck in towers of limiting beliefs, and they need to see that lantern, just like Rapunzel in the movie saw the light, and that stirred her curiosity to find the truth and to find out about who she was. So I'm doing it for that person. So I think it's remembering who you are and remembering who you are for, who you are doing this for. That is what keeps me encouraged on days when I feel like giving up. And I just want to say to that person, just don't give up. Some days it's just one step in front of the other.
Right.
And perseverance will get the job done. Just remember who you are and remember why you are doing it.
Amazing. That's great advice. Beyond book 7, are you just going to keep going? Is there any end in sight to your journey? Are you just going to keep writing more and more? What's happening?
I have no idea.
I love it.
Every time I think I'm done, something else will drop into my heart, and I will just follow that lantern.
Amazing.
I just follow. Yeah.
What is the age range for the children's books?
So the picture book is for children between the age of 3 and 7.
Okay.
And then I have the children's series, which is for readers between, I would say, the age of 7 and 11.
Okay.
So it's early chapter books.
Nice. For the picture book, what about the artwork? How did you navigate that?
Oh, that was a big learning experience as well.
Nice.
I actually made use of artificial intelligence
Wow.
and used some graphic producing software to illustrate the book. Nice. And it was actually quite incredible because I received the words for the book and then had it edited by my editor. She's amazing. She did that within a couple of days. And then I just played around. I was having so much fun just playing around, using some creative apps, and put this together. And this book was published on Amazon within a week. The entire book was done within a week.
From beginning to end in a week.
From beginning to end. I've never done anything that quickly. Never. So that was so much fun. I had so much fun doing that.
At that pace, you could do 52 books a year. Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Was that your first time using AI in that way to illustrate?
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's a big learning curve as well to try this new thing, but it's great.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I decided to write a book for authors as well, to just share some of the experiences that I've learned, because a lot of it has been just learning on the go. And when you get stuck, then you find a different way of doing things. So, it's amazing what technology can do these days and how much we can accomplish.
What's the name of the book for the authors?
Answering the Call to Write.
Okay. Awesome. And that's available everywhere as well with all the other books?
Yes, all available on Amazon. Or you can look at my website as well, MelizaFarndell.com.
Say it again. What was that?
Oh, yeah. MelizaFarndell.com.
There you go. There you go. I talked over you. I'm sorry. That's it. Okay, good. The other question I have is, where are you most active online? Where do you live on social media?
I mainly live in Facebook land.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram. And yeah, I do have a coaching group for authors that's free on Facebook. So anybody who's interested is welcome to just send me a direct message and I can hook you up.
Okay. I've never asked, in 250 plus episodes, I've never asked anybody this. So you're the first one. So it just popped in my mind and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with this. What do you need help with? There's people listening to this podcast who are amazing human beings that listen to this show from around the world, who would love to jump in and give you assistance on something that you need help with in your writing career or just whatever you need. I just want to be able to give you the opportunity to ask for something. Is there something that you need? Because the people listening might have the answer for you and love to connect with you. What do you need?
Yeah. Well, for me, my biggest challenge has been getting my message out there.
Okay.
So opportunity to share
Yep.
and just share about the books, that would be amazing, because really it is about getting that message out into the world. And that's been the biggest challenge for me. So, like just the opportunity to be here today, David, it's been just amazing for me to be able to share and get that message out. So any help in any way with that side of the publishing process would be amazing.
Well, for two introverts to be on a podcast together, having a conversation, we're both going to need a nap after this, but it's
Yes.
great to have you on. And if you had any trepidation at all about coming onto a podcast, you were amazing. So I
Thank
encourage
you.
you to keep going forward and keep sharing your message, because you have a lot of great things to offer the world just by what you've seen and who you can help. And I just want to encourage you to keep moving forward, keep writing, keep sharing that message. And I'm thrilled to have you here. So thank you for making time to do this. And again, let's promote the website one more time and all that as well. Where do we go? What do we do?
So you can find me at melizafarndell.com. You're welcome to send me an email if you want, meliza@melizafarndell.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Meliza Farndell Author.
And we'll have links to all of it in the show notes, and everyone can find all the information there. Meliza, thank you so much for making time to be on Living the Next Chapter. It's great having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So as you continue writing, you got to come back though, okay?
I'd love to.
Is that okay?
Love to. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll leave the door open and the light on. You can come back anytime you wish, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you, David.
All right. All the information will be in the show notes, everyone. And again, if you can help Meliza, reach out and let's see if we can help each other. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Thanks for checking out Living the Next Chapter. Happy to have you here. And here at the end, I want to just put this shout out to authors listening. If you want to sell more books, if you want to build community, one of the best ways you can do that is by guesting on podcasts and or having your own podcast. So I have a podcast called the How to Podcast series, and I help people start podcasts. I also do editing. I also help with social media, website design. I do all those things in addition to being the host of this podcast and the 6 other podcasts that I do, including How to Podcast series. I think you would be the perfect person to start a podcast. I would love to help you. Head over to howtopodcast.ca, howtopodcast.ca. Reach out, let me know if you're interested in starting a podcast, and I want to work with you. Thanks for listening to Living the Next Chapter. Catch you on the next one. Take care.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.